Welcome to this new session of print media journalism. And in today's class, we are going to discuss the news determinants and the principles of news writing. News determinants. It is also referred to as news values. These are the criteria or the principles that guide journalists and news organizations in selecting and prioritizing which stories to cover and how to present them. That is, regarding each news organization, they'll have certain values or the principles they follow, or it might be in the case of even journalists who follow certain principles or certain criteria while doing or while presenting a news or while reporting a news. These are called news determinants. And these values can vary slightly depending on the context and culture of the news organization. That is, in certain cases, depending on the news organization and their culture and their context of reporting news, these values, news determinants, might vary slightly. So now we are going to discuss some common news determinants. The first one is timeliness. Timeliness means that whatever news you are presenting, it should be of current relevance and it must be up to date. The stories that are happening now or have recently occurred are given higher priority while preparing a news report. The second one, or the second most important news determinant, is the significance or impact of the news you are going to present. So in significance or impact, we could say that the stories that we present or the news that we present should have a significant impact on the individuals or the communities or the society as a whole, and this is considered more newsworthy. Includes events with far-reaching consequences. You might discuss several issues in a newspaper. While reading a newspaper or while reading any other forms of print media journalism, we could say that the topic they are discussing has a relevance, that is, it has much significance to the reader and it has a greater impact on the reader. The third common news determinant is proximity. Speaking about proximity, it means that the events that happen closer to the audience are often considered as more relevant. That is, whatever things that happen around them or surrounding them is more important or that is considered as more relevant. And the local news tends to get more coverage than distant or international events. That is, the people who are reading the news gets more attracted or they are much more interested in the news that has happened closer to them, that is within a closer proximity. And the fourth one is the conflict. We know that the news stories often involve some form of conflict, whether it's a political dispute, it might be a social conflict, or even it might be a competitive sports event. So the conflict tends to attract attention of the reader. This is another major news determinant. So news determinant or news values means that the major things they take into consideration while preparing a news, and this conflict is one among them. And the fifth one is human interest. It means that the stories that evoke strong emotions, involve human drama, or have a compelling narrative are often deemed newsworthy. These stories resonate with audiences. That is, a person who is reading a news. The reader gets more interested in reading the news when he could resonate or he could connect with the news that he is reading. That is what is meant by human interest. And the next one is prominence. In prominence, individuals or institutions with high social, political, or celebrity status often attract media attention. We have seen that in the daily events that happen around us, that the individuals or the institutions who are in a high social or political or if they have a celebrity status, they often tend to have a media attention, and people want to know about the actions and the lives of these well-known figures. So the prominence is another one of the determinant. And the next one, the seventh one, is novelty or rarity. That is, the unusual or the rare events or even the phenomena that tend to be newsworthy. That is, if a thing happens that is novel, that is new, or if it is something that happens rare, it kind of attracts the attention of the reader. And this includes stories that break the norm or have an element of surprise. That is, if it's kind of something different from what usually happens, or if it has an element of surprise within it, it attracts the attention of the reader. And another one of the major news determinant we could consider is the relevance of the story or the relevance of the news report. In relevance, you have to understand that the stories that directly affect the interests and concerns of the audience are prioritized. If it has a much more relevance to the audience, that is, if it is able to connect with the audience, it is prioritized. And this can vary depending on the target audience. That is, every audience or every reader might not have the same kind of attraction towards each type of news. Depending on the type of news, each audience or each reader, their concept of reading the news or their will to understand the news, it might change. So relevance of the story and the importance of and the interest of the reader towards that news story or the news report is very much important. And another important factor is the ethical considerations, and journalistic ethics play a role in news selection. Journalistic ethics is a very important factor while considering news determinants. And the stories that adhere to ethical principles such as accuracy, fairness, and avoiding harm are given preference. So these are the main things you have to know while considering ethical considerations. And the next one is currency. Currency means the topics that are popular or that are in the current trends are given more prominence. That is, the news outlets might prioritize stories that are related to the current trends or popular topics of discussion. That the currency of the topic, how much relevant it is in the present situation, or how much it connects with the present situation is very much important. And the next one is economic viability. That is, in some cases, the financial viability of a news story, it might be a news determinant, and especially it might be relevant in the case of commercial news organizations. And the stories that attract advertisers or viewership may be prioritized. It is the thing we see, or this thing we can usually see in our newspapers today, or whatever media platform you choose to listen to news. You can see that advertisement is one of the major factors that affect this news determinants, and if that helps the financial stability of the organization, it might be given a priority. So these are the main important things you'll have to know about the news determinants. And now we'll have to know the principles of news writing. It's almost similar to that of the news determinants, and while knowing about the principles of news writing, you have to note these points. That is, they are really important. They are very much important. And the first one we will have to learn is accuracy. This is the foremost principle of news writing, and the journalist must give importance to present the facts and information that are true and verified. That is the accuracy. The news that they are providing must be accurate. They must be verified, and this must be true. And double checking these facts, it is also an important factor, because double checking facts and confirming details from reliable sources is essential to avoid errors. Coming to the next one, we'll have to know about objectivity. Objectivity means that the journalist should aim to be objective and impartial in their reporting. They must not support a certain group or something while reporting the news. They must be impartial and must be objective. And this means presenting the news without a personal bias or opinion. Okay, so it must not have a personal bias or it must not support a particular group or anything, but it must be objective in the sense. And the reporters should stick to the facts and avoid injecting their own opinions or emotions into the story. It must be of relevance. It must be able, or the news must be able to connect with the reader, and it must be objective. It must not have any personal bias or something in the news. And the next one is fairness and balance. That is, the news stories should be fair and balanced, giving voice to different sides of an issue when applicable. And the journalist should also seek out different perspectives and provide readers with a well-rounded view of the topic. That what topic they are presenting in the news or what they are doing while reporting a news, it must have different perspectives engaged with that. And the next one is very simple, the clarity. Clarity means whatever news you are writing or you are preparing the news writing, it should be clear and it must be easily understood by a broad audience, because it's not intended for a particular reader. So it must be clear so that it could be understood by a whole range of or a broad audience. And the complex topics which we discuss in these news stories, it must be explained in a plain language, and anything unnecessary use of language or the over ornamentation of language or using of the jargons must be avoided while reporting on news. The next one is brevity. Brevity means that the news stories should be concise and to the point. As we said in accuracy, it must be short, it must be effective, it should be concise, and it must be up to the point. And the journalist should aim to convey the information efficiently using as few words as necessary. It must be concise, it must be precise, and they must provide a context and relevance to the news. So the words that they use or the sentence patterns that they use, it must be concise and precise, but still it must convey the context and its relevance to the audience. And the next one is timeliness. As we discussed earlier in news determinant, timeliness means the stories should be timely and it must reflect the current events or the developments. And the next one is relevance. We'll discuss this also earlier. And relevance also, it means it's almost similar to the timeliness. That is, it must be relevant. It must reflect the current events that happens in the society, and it must be relevant to the reader. Okay. And attribution. Attribution means when using information from sources, the journalist should attribute it appropriately. That means they should give the credit to the source and providing context for the information's credibility. From whichever source they are taking this information, they must give proper credit to that. And the next one is ethical considerations. As we told earlier, they have to follow a code of ethics, which is very crucial in news writing, and this includes respecting privacy and avoiding any harm, and it must be transparent about the conflicts of interest. So it must have an ethical perspective in its, or it must have an ethical perspective. And it must have headlines and leads. The headline and the lead, that is the first paragraph of the news story, should grab the reader's attention, and this paragraph should summarize the key points of the story. That is, the reader might not read the full-length story at times. So the first few paragraphs, or the first paragraph must convey the essential idea of what the news is about. And fact-checking. Fact-checking is one of the most important things, because you cannot share a news which is wrong. So the journalist should rigorously fact-check their stories before publication. And the legal considerations means that the journalist should be aware of the legal issues related to the reporting, such as the libel, defamation laws, and they should avoid publishing false or damaging information about individuals or organizations, which can be done by proper fact-checking and by ethical considerations. So these are the main principles you have to know while So these are the main things we are going to discuss in today's class. So I hope you have understood each and everything. So thank you for the session.